Okay, hello. Welcome back. This is a much anticipated conversation. I have been really excited to have my next guest on the podcast. I'm going to introduce you to her. Her name is Summer Aguila. Hoping I'm pronouncing the last name correctly. Did I get
Aguila,
it?
You're pretty close.
Aguila? Okay, so close. And I'm going to introduce you to her right now, and then we're going to just dive in. I know this is going to be such a juicy conversation. So Summer is an autistic trauma expert who utilizes her energy healing gifts and deep scientific knowledge of the human experience to facilitate rapid, holistic transformations that restore mental health, reclaim the nervous system, and explodes vibrational magnetism. So all of that right there just like tingles and lights me on fire in so many different ways, because what you're saying, what you're talking about online, the posts that you share, I'm always like, oh my God, I love it. Like I love the angle that you come at stuff from. Like you're a disruptor in a huge way. And I love that. So welcome to
Thank you.
the podcast. I'm so glad to have you here.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. So tell us just like a little bit about yourself. How did you get into this work? Just start off with that for now.
Yeah. So how I got into this is actually kind of twofold. Like one of them was I've always been wired a little bit differently. One of my clients actually found the perfect word for it. She's like, you're a frequent seer, like SEER. Because yeah, I did spell it right. I don't really see time space at all. I never have, which was not fun living in the South. Like the Civil War was still going on and stuff like that. But I would always see like frequencies. And so I healed myself a lot as a kid. I grew up in a very abusive household, so I had to. And that's actually where I started really working on like the energy work. And I learned a ton of like root working and different skills working with nature when I was a kid. Fast forward to me getting older, after a very spicy childhood, I had pretty gnarly mental illnesses and a couple of non-substance addictions, because I was like, oh, I'm from a family of drunks and druggies. I'm not going to get on alcohol or booze. I had no idea you could get addicted to people and feelings. So I went down that rabbit hole. And when I crawled out of it, there were actually very few people, especially that were like female presenting, that had experience with rehab and non-substance addictions. So I ended up first from a 12-step consultant standpoint, different rehabs were asking me to be there. And now I consult in over 90 rehabs in most of the US. And I think I'm in 31 countries now. With COVID, a couple of them shut down, so I'm in less. But and I was working with a lot of people that were just absolutely brilliant. And one of the doctors I was working with, who had seen that like the process that I was using was working over and over and over with people that were coming out of very extreme situations. Like that particular rehab, we would get people that were rescued from the Family of God, or the Family International, Children of God. There we go. They changed their name. They were Children of God. Now they're the Family International. But they're a pretty gnarly cult, but they still have rescue efforts that go to different places to rehab. And that was one of the places I was working. And he's like, well, why don't you do this for a living? You know, life coaches and trauma experts make a ton of money unless you're chicken. And that's actually how I started my business, because I couldn't combine the energy work at all in a clinical setting. They just, it was weird, even though you can prove, and it has been proven scientifically multiple times, that people react to unseen energy. Most of those experiments being psychology experiments, they were still very reticent about it. So I was like, all right. Funny thing is a lot of those rehabs now are asking me to train their staff. I'm like, really? You mean on my woo-woo stuff?
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like the toe is starting to get dipped into that whole world and the whole like, in the mainstream more, which is wonderful and beautiful. And geez, okay, so yes, trauma and like woo-woo put together. I think that oftentimes there's such a huge divide between these two worlds, and I like how you say that you had a spicy childhood. I would say the same thing about myself. And that's why I'm so interested in, trauma recovery, and I have a background in psychology as well. But bringing these two things together is so important, and people are not having these conversations. And like, I believe there's just a whole lot of like victim blaming going on in this world, in the sphere of energetics and manifestation and all that. And I try to call it out, and I love how you call it out.
Oh,
So
yeah. New age narcissists hate me, and I'm like, but you realize it's a narcissistic abuse with woke wording, but it's the same thing. It's invalidating people's needs, it's invalidating their experience, and it's dehumanizing them, asking them to suck it up and just be happy anyway. Like,
that's a toxic positivity, right?
Yeah.
And I think on the part of many of us, like many people don't even know what codependency is. Like they think it's just being overly dependent on a partner, but that is not what codependency is. And so many of these people coming in and studying, manifestation, they become highly codependent on their teachers, right? On their gurus, on their coaches. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, it's funny because actually that's a large part of what I do with my clients is I have a lot of clients that come to me because they have coach trauma, where it was these very toxic, very codependent relationships with a lot of gaslighting. And they also were paying lots of money for this. So it's bad enough when someone's abusive to you, but when you've paid them like $20,000 to do it, it hits a next level. And this is something that, like, I know people brag about their numbers and getting people in and all this other crap, but I might ruffle some feathers here, but not everyone should be working with everyone that is willing to pay them. And there's a lot of, especially in coaching and self-improvement, a lot of people that don't realize that they are repackaging abuse in different wording. Like, for example, in more traditional coaching, that I'm not going to mention names, but the stuff you see on TV and stuff, where they'll just yell at somebody and bully someone into like a traumatic break, literal psychotic break, and be like, look, we fixed them. Like, no, you actually just fucked them up so much more. And you did in front of people. So for me, I actually left coaching for a while because I was actually ashamed to be associated with people that were that like Machiavellian, that were that fucking clueless, that were like hurting that many people and bragging about it. Honestly, just bragging about, well, they're paying me and they're coming in. Like, it should be more, if you're in a service industry where you help people, the bottom line should not be the only thing that matters, and the only thing you're bragging about. Actually helping people should be it. But also, I come from psychology and medicine background, and I was a teacher before that, so like I went into things not for the paychecks, for damn sure. It was actually helping people. And so it breaks my heart because a lot of these people come with a ton of trauma, and it's hard for them to trust. And it's hard for them to even have a little bit of hope that something can change. And I think it's unconscionably unethical to crush that hope with just, imagine a new reality bullshit. Just, there's no nice word for it. It is bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, like with the whole realm of infinite possibility and potential, that is a part of it, right? That is not the only part we can like we have to honor the human experience. We have to honor the full range of human emotions, and not just discount and negate and bypass, right? Like there's just so much bypassing. And I want to just go back for a second to a couple of the terms that we use, because I'm sure there's a lot of people who don't know like what they mean. So I want to go back to codependency. Can you give us a quick explanation of what you would consider codependency to be?
Yeah, it's when your internal sense of self and stabilization is determined by external factors. Quite often it's used with other people, but a lot of people can be codependent on, actually, OCD is a form of codependency because you are completely dependent on the outside world being like a certain way, or you can't function. Codependency is one of those very umbrella terms that most people seem to understand only in like one way of, most people think of like, the clingy girlfriend being like, I need you, with a guy or something.
Yeah.
But that's actually not it at all. It's also the coaches that can't post unless they get enough likes and enough feedback from it. It's also the people that are terrified to move forward unless, mom approves and their sister approves and dad's on board. And so it can
People
be a lot of,
pleasing.
yeah, it can be a lot of external sources that aren't even necessarily a romantic partner.
Yeah, basically it's like your locus is just outside of yourself, right? Like,
Exactly. Yeah. And you're
yeah.
constantly chasing it, basically.
Yeah, that's exhausting.
Yeah.
That's exhausting. Okay, and then the next one was gaslighting. Can you explain
Yeah.
what is gaslighting and how do coaches gaslight people?
Yeah. This one is actually fun because I like to know like where things come from, especially in the English language. There's a lot of phrases that I have no place that they came from. This one's actually cool because it was from a movie where the husband was like turning down the light back when they were actual gas lamps on the lights, and then telling her he wasn't, so that she was feeling crazy. And a lot of times that people do the same sort of thing. Like for example, I had a really gnarly sexual assault that I was processing with a coach, and she told me that I was staying in victim mentality by processing the fact that I had gotten raped. And I was like, that sort of thing is a gaslight. It comes in different ways, but if you're basically being told in some way you're not allowed to feel the way that you feel, or the way
Yeah.
that you're feeling is invalid because, and then they insert whatever their reason is, that's definitely being gaslighted. It's
Yeah, we're
invalidation and dismissal.
invalidation. And I think we all do it,
Mhm.
to one another. It's kind of like we kind of like, oh, get over it type
Mhm.
thing. But it's just being cognizant of it. And if coaches are doing it, like that's a whole next level. Like if you went to a therapist that was gaslighting you, that would be so many red flags on top of red flags, right? And there's just no accountability for it. And I'm really sorry that happened to you. I was actually inside of a program with a coach who was doing something very similar in a group setting, and I actually spoke up about it, and I was basically gaslit about it. I was like,
Same thing
oh,
here. Yeah, I
okay.
was choosing a victim mentality. That's what I got. I was like, I'm choosing this
Yeah.
right now, bish.
Yeah. The answer that I got was, well, this method has helped a lot of people, so whatever you're saying doesn't matter. I'm like, okay.
There are a lot of very famous life coaches that made their living off of bullying people and yelling at them until they had a disassociative break and became someone else, and that's not a flex. People
Yeah.
changing is not necessarily a flex.
Mm-hmm.
That could
Yeah.
mean you're
So
a bully, which
that
a lot of times it does.
I mean, like, yeah, tough love to a point, right? And then it's like,
Mhm.
where do we draw the line? So
Mhm.
let's spin this back around into something positive instead of just,
Mhm.
criticizing the coaching industry, because there's a lot of, there's a lot of potential for good and a lot of potential for positive to come out of it, which is why I think both of us are in the
Mhm.
industry, right? So how is it that you see what you're doing, like making a huge change in the coaching industry? Like, why do we need to focus on trauma when we're doing this energetic work?
Yeah. I think both energetic and physical, because a lot of times people like treat either, mindset issues or something like that. And they don't realize that it actually is like how your nervous system was wired. And if your nervous system wasn't wired in a safe, encouraging system, then going in front of a mirror and saying affirmations every day isn't really going to help. You can
Mm,
tap on your face till you give yourself black eyes, and it's not going to really do a whole heck of a lot until you get down to the root of it, which is why I also am like a huge proponent of working with your nervous system
mhm.
specifically, because your conscious mind actually doesn't have that much control in your day to day. And that's another one that's been scientifically proven.
Yeah.
Your subconscious makes a minimum of 95% of your decisions, and that's run by your nervous system and your inner child. So if you're doing any sort of self improvement work that doesn't specifically focus on your nervous system and your inner child, you are going to be like spinning your wheels big time on that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I totally feel that, especially
yeah,
when you said about the affirmations piece. Like, affirmations just used to make me angry.
me too. And that's
Yeah.
actually a trauma response because you've been told to think something different. And so you're basically gaslighting yourself. Like, I
Yeah.
feel great. I feel happy. I have $1 million. And your conscious mind's like, bitch, you feel awful and you're in the negative. Don't even try to play me like that.
Yeah, it creates like serious cognitive dissonance, right? It's like
Mhm,
so much friction, internal friction. So for
mhm,
me, the way that I tapped out of that was like, what do affirmations really actually mean? Like for me, it changed
mhm.
the meaning of it from
Yeah.
I am in this moment, like
Mhm,
I am rich, to the
mhm.
I am, like capital I am, like the
Yeah.
internal the truth of who I am, my
Yeah.
consciousness, like at a fundamental source level, I am all those things. So
Mhm,
that the affirmations for me then became reconnecting with my source and truth rather than trying to paste on some kind of like, you know,
mhm,
band-aid to try to
mhm.
pull me up to this like level of believing, which felt completely inaccessible, you know.
Yeah, it is. And the great thing that I found is like I train a lot of coaches too in this way of working. And so I'm trying to help with the coaching industry by like producing more not only trauma informed, but trauma fluent, because
Yeah,
I think a lot of people might cognitively know how to handle trauma, but that might not necessarily translate into practicum all the time.
got
Um,
it.
s- so very much like trauma fluent as well. I see this, I work a lot in like clinical psychology, and I'll see the same with people who've, studied the books, but they haven't had the experience with it particularly. So they know the book knowledge, but then when they see it, I mean, it's like if anyone like you're a mom, you read the books. Was that anything like actually having a baby? I couldn't even
No,
get through that sentence.
no, it's way more layered, you know?
Exactly. And it's the same sort of thing when you're digging into trauma. The other part of it too is I've been working with just as I've been working with different coaches and stuff, they've asked me to like do, just one-off things to give them different perspectives and tools to work with their clients, which is funny because I used to pride myself on not being one of those coaches who coaches coaches. I actually work with a lot of my my career background. I was a model and an actress for a really long time. And so I have a lot of friends that also were too. And those are not really mentally healthy industries to be in.
Right.
So I work a lot with them, and also like a lot of them are leaving their industries but still would like to keep the money, so they're doing something different. But now I've actually started working with some coaches that are like, hey, can I just pick your brain for like an hour on what to do for these different things? And it's been beautiful to me to see people like yourself that just see something, they're like, oh man, I like that knowledge, and they come to me and they're like, I would like to know more. And one of my big things when I first started was normalizing the human experience with the fact that like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know everything. I have shitty days. I get period poops like everybody else. I'm
Yeah.
just a normal person. And that's also made it more approachable for people that are, 7, 8 figure coaches to be like, okay, well, I'll ask, which I'm glad about, because it's not that I want to work with everyone. Like that, I definitely don't want to. I don't even have the spoons for that. Like I work with groups
Right.
because I can't do a lot of one-on-one, but I do want people to actually have this knowledge for their own self and for the people that they're
Mm-hmm.
working with. Because there are very few things that are universal, but like your nervous system running your body is pretty much for everybody.
Yeah, right.
There are very few exceptions where your nervous system doesn't have
Doesn't
anything to do with your day to day.
Yeah, right. It's perfect. I was actually just going to come back to that idea of like you're soothing your nervous system and working with your nervous system. What are some ways that people can even start that work? Because when you hear that, you're like, oh, my nervous system? That sounds like a
Yeah.
job for a professional, you know?
Yeah, which for certain things you should, depending on the work
Absolutely.
you're doing. So I will actually keep that asterisk there. That being said, like I actually did a free challenge last week. It was received with ease, and I gave them different vagus nerve exercises that you can do. Your vagus nerve is it's really cool. It controls like all three of your nervous systems. You have
Mm-hmm.
a sympathetic nervous system which feels the anxiety, a limbic system which is kind of the mediator to get both your nervous systems to chill out, and then the parasympathetic system, which takes care of reproduction, digestion. That's why people with chronic anxiety also usually have chronic constipation, really, really bad menstrual issues too. But your vagus nerve, which is basically like right behind the sharpest part of your jawline,
Mm-hmm.
that controls everything. So with very gentle massage, especially if you have like one of those gua sha ones, you can just kind of rub
Oh,
it out
the
to the
roller.
side. Yeah. Oh man, where's the little gua sha ones that look like a
Oh, they're
sideways
like
curtain?
a triangle. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I have got one of those
Yeah,
somewhere too. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
there we go. Yeah, you can actually just kind of, and you'll feel when it's tense, like right now I felt it, it feels like a little knot. And you want to go straight along with your jaw curve. Like my jaw's pretty straight, so I'm going straight, but if you have a heart-shaped face, go up. And that's one way almost immediately to start getting it to calm down. Another one, if you don't have anything around, it is, you don't have to do this with your hands. I'll just demonstrate it because it's a lot easier this way. You just kind of interlace your fingers, put them behind your head, and you can even put your thumbs on the base of your skull to keep it straight. You look forward and you want to have your elbows as far out as you can so they're not kind of, and you'll actually look at one, try to look at one elbow and keep your face straight. You don't want to look down. You don't want to look up. Just straight at it until it's happening. Right.
Oh, and then you yawn.
Until, yeah, you either yawn or swallow. Then you go back to center
Yeah.
and do the same on the other side. You don't have to have your hands up. Ooh, I just got myself a little dizzy. There's like such a blood rush. You actually don't have to have your hands up. That's just something like when you're first learning it to keep your head straight. But I used to do that a lot when I worked in hospitals, especially like trauma and emergency rooms, because my adrenaline was constantly pumping and I would actually feel my kidneys hurting from it.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and I would do that a few times to get my body to chill out. And then I was like, okay, at least you're not pumping adrenaline right now.
Yeah, that's huge. Oh goodness. So for anybody who is listening and is like, I don't know what you just did, you can go to YouTube and watch the you can watch the video for those of you who are just listening. If you didn't follow along with the hands, the fingers intertwined, put them behind your head, thumbs on base, elbows out, and then look at your elbow. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, but if you want to watch the YouTube video,
Yeah.
you can watch the YouTube video. That's really helpful. I've been thinking a lot about my nervous system lately, which is such a funny thing. But I've been spending a lot of time up in the middle of the night with my daughter, and my nervous system it's just really being fried from the sleep deprivation. And trying to think of ways that I can keep when I'm all keyed up like that I can chill out so that I can actually go to sleep without requiring, taking some kind of supplements or, whatever other substance to help me just actually turn off and go to sleep. Do you have any recommendations for that?
Yeah, I have a few actually. And most of them are nervous system based.
Yeah.
So right around your perineum area, we have what's called the psoas muscle group, and that kind of chills everything out. You can get into a deep squat to where you're almost looks like you're pooping in the forest, way deep squat where your butt's almost on the ground. And if you rock either side to side or back or front, that'll stretch out those muscles and do that for about 3 to 5 minutes. Fair warning with that though, because you also stretch your hips with it, you might have an emotional release too.
Oh, right. Yeah. There's a ton of emotions in the hips. I know that from my yoga practice. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Lots of tears.
Oh, I know. One of the first times I started doing deep yoga for, I have a trauma informed yoga certification, and I was curious about that. I was like, oh, I don't see how this will help. And I did a few poses and I was like, I
know. I used to cry every time I went to yoga, and I was like, what's going on? What's wrong with me?
Yeah. And I'm generally a stoic person. So I was like, what's happening? Yoga's breaking me, but I needed to be broken. I was too icy.
Yeah, me too. So good. And this just goes to show you that the body is intrinsically linked with the energy, right? It's not a far out concept, guys. It's just, there's so much evidence of it all over the place in your day-to-day all the time. When you feel emotions, you feel physical sensations in your body, and when
that's actually the way you're supposed to feel emotions. When your therapist says feel your feelings, people think it's oh, well, let me just be mentally sad for a long time. No, where do you feel it? Is it tightness in your chest? That's actually, that reconnection is
It's
huge for
so
healing.
important. Yeah. And just even in like increasing your emotional intelligence is,
Mm-hmm.
I think is a huge part of that, is being able to name the feeling and name what it feels like in the body, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah,
really
that's huge.
reconnecting to yourself and your experience. And I was just saying this, like, when we signed up to come to this world, when we were like writing our soul contracts and all that stuff, like, we signed up for the full range of human emotions.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we came here for. We came for the full human experience, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it is required. You can't run away from it.
Yeah, there's a quote that I can't remember who said it, and I'm gonna kind of butcher it, but basically, like, when I'm dead and go meet my maker, like, I want to say that, like, yeah, every one of those crayons that you gave me in the coloring box is like down to a nub. I didn't just use, like, the Roy G. Biv and ignore the black, brown, and the lesser pretty ones. And
Mhm.
to think about that, I'm like, yeah, actually, I do want to wear down all my metaphorical crayons to nubs before I'm whatever they do with my remains.
Yeah, for transitioning on to the next, I
Yeah,
don't
there you
know,
go. Yeah,
realm or timeline, or
yeah.
wherever
Or
wherever
whatever
you're
dumb
headed,
decision I make next time. No, I'm kidding.
whatever you sign up for next.
Yeah, I'm all,
I
let's
think,
do it again.
yeah. Oh, the possibilities. Oh, this is so good. Okay, what do I want to ask you next? There's so much. Okay, what would you say is the biggest sort of like misunderstanding or myth about manifestation?
That you don't have to do anything. I think, I mean, I'll elaborate, but I think that that one's like one of the biggest myths, that you can just, daydream here and there and then just continue on life as normal. Don't take care of any underlying issues that might be preventing it. Don't deal with your nervous system so it can feel comfortable to receive that and not terrified.
Mm-hmm.
Don't take any action steps to get yourself to that point. And then, oh, my manifestation doesn't work. It doesn't work for me. But there is more to it than, drawing sigils or sigils or however you pronounce it, and, manifapping. You gotta take some steps, whether it's actually in your business or whatever it is you're doing, or within yourself, just because, I mean, in order to be a vibrational match, our vibration is also our physical bodies. So if our
Mm-hmm.
physical bodies don't feel safe, like, for example, I grew up, it was weird. I grew up poor, but around a lot of like ridiculously, like, I know a couple of Rothschilds that are friends of mine, and I
Wow.
know a couple of former Gettys, but they've changed their names because Gettys have a tendency to get kidnapped. So I grew up with like really, 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 really insane wealth, as well as being very poor. And the two of those together ended up giving me, my nervous system was just like fried when it came to money, because it was either
Mm-hmm.
something stressful you have to get, or something stressful people are trying to get from you and could potentially put your life and your family's lives in danger. So for
Right.
me, manifesting wasn't working because my nervous system was terrified of money. My
Mm-hmm.
manifesting wasn't working because I wasn't like digging into my inner child stuff and seeing what the hell was going on that was preventing it. My manifesting wasn't working because I wasn't nurturing my inner child at all to help that poor little kid like come around to the other side. And I was doing the same thing my parents did, which was just like, oh, suck it up and deal with your feelings by yourself, which my parents did the best they could. That being said, that's not exactly great parenting, and I don't want to do that to myself. So
Yeah.
it wasn't necessarily that I was in Facebook posting every day, or it was that I was like on Insta every day with reels or something, but I still had to do the work on the back end of getting myself to be a vibrational match on the things that needed to, which is
Mm-hmm.
something that I'm still working on. Like, one of my good friends that's a former Getty, she changes her name every once in a while for her safety. We were talking about it the other day, and she's phenomenally wealthy, and she's literally moving, running for her life all the time, changing her name constantly. And she's like, I kind of wish I had been born poor and I could just have a real life. And
Mm-hmm.
I've known her since I was 3, so she's like a sister to me. So those sort of things were what was preventing me. It wasn't necessarily that I needed to do more online or that I needed to envision more. It was that psychologically there was some blocks. My inner child was terrified, and my nervous system was like, yeah, dude, this isn't safe. No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, safety is like inner safety, nervous system safety. That's something that not a lot of people really like go into. And I just think it's because not a lot of people have the tools to help with it. So they just kind of like skirt by it. And it's interesting, there's actually two kind of really conflicting messages in the manifestation world. One is like, you don't have to do anything. And then there's the other message that's like a lot of pressure around inspired action, right? Like,
hustle.
Yeah. But it's like, I don't know. So it's not that you have to do certain things, right? To in order to manifest, it's that you have to do things in a certain way, right?
Yeah.
Like it's that you're doing things from how you're being, right? Like, so you're becoming the energetic match, but it's not just about being the energetic match. It's also moving in that way. It's also being that person and making decisions and choices as the energetic matched person would, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it's just approaching it from like who is that person, and that I want to just make note, like that person is not outside of you, right? Like that other person is in you already, and this is about, again, like going inwards, not having that external locus of control or like feeling like you don't measure up. Right? Like that's another problem that I see in the world, is like people feeling like, well, I feel like an imposter when I'm being next level me. But like that's when you're in your brain you're imagining your next level you as like this lofty version of you that's like above you, but it's not. Like you have to imagine it in your heart, in your core, in your soul. Like next level me is like that deep me. You know what I mean? I feel like even that shift in imagery and the way you imagine it helps a lot in knowing that like that power is already there. It's not something you have to grasp at, you know, in order to do the things. And then again, coming back to this idea like of doing, when we talked about affirmations, or when we talk about journaling or vision boarding or blah 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 blah, there's a lot of actions like that you can do again and again and again and again, and they won't change anything for you, because it's you know, it's creating resistance inside of you because you don't believe those things, because you haven't done the underlying work, which is what you're talking about. You're talking about like the nervous system and the inner child and the like the baseline, the stories, the foundations, like all of that stuff. So it's healing, really. It's a lot of healing work.
It is. And same, it's funny because it ends up being the path to like everything. Because a lot of people come to me also wanting their psychic skills developed, and they're like, oh, I want to be able to see and interpret everything like you. I'm like, one, no, you don't. It's very distracting. And two, it's all the same path. Like it really is all the same path, which is getting like everything on board, because especially in like a Western capitalistic society, we're so disconnected from ourselves. We're so disconnected from our emotions. We're so disconnected from even like earth, let alone source. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't even know like where their food is grown. You know?
Right.
Like I saw the other day, I saw a fruit that's like very out of season here, and I was like, that's really weird. Where the hell they get that from? And it was from Chile. And this little kid picked it up and was like, why is this fruit called child? And I was like, we don't even know where our food comes from. We're so disconnected with absolutely everything. And the only way to like, get back into the vortex, so to speak, or whether it's for manifesting, whether it's for developing psychic gifts or your spiritual self, is all the same of like actually healing and taking care of the body and the mind, which I get a lot of hell for it, for being so 3D and focused on the 3D and stuck in this physically manifested reality. And I'm like, I really think it's shitty of you to dismiss it. Like, I really do. Like,
why are we discounting it so much, right? Like we signed up for this. We asked for it. It's important. It's what we like. It's important. We needed it. We asked for it. We wanted it, right? Like consciousness experiencing itself through the 3D. So why are we like, ew, 3D?
Oh, 3D.
You know what I mean? Like,
oh, physical body nervous system now.
This is our like this is our like it's like our what am I trying to say? Like, it's the circuitry we've been given
It
to
is, yeah.
to do the energetic work. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a new, it's almost like the body and the nervous system. It's like a new toy. It's like, we gotta like, not even, well, toy tool, you know, we gotta learn to utilize it and work with it rather than discount it and work against it. And that's where I come from too, in everything that I teach. And I just want to rewind for 1 second when we're talking about healing. You're not broken. You don't have to fix yourself. Healing work doesn't mean you're broken, right? Like, I just want to say that too, because this is like, you know, my whole journey too, was like trying to constantly heal from the trauma and feeling like I was always on this wheel of like, I'm gonna fix myself, I'm gonna heal, I'm gonna, you know, get rid of these problems and this trauma. And it's like, okay, that was a huge part of my journey too, was like acceptance. Like, no, you're not broken. And then that also that came from going inward again. Like, that source version of you was never broken, can never be broken. This is just this is a coming home process, really.
That's exactly it. It's like feeling safe to be yourself again, because most of us, our whole lives, like most of our conditioning in childhood is just not being yourself, you know, whether it's school or something else.
Yeah. There's a lot of systems in the world that bring us away from it, right? Like you're saying, like there's a lack of connection. Like, you know, my 3 pillars, which I gleaned from Brene Brown, are courage, compassion, connection, you know. And I think that brings us back to our hearts, you know. And I think that like that's where our home really is in our hearts, and like connection is required, and you have to be courageous in order to you know, be authentically you, and you have to have compassion for yourself along the way, because that is the antidote to shame, in my opinion. You know, it's like compassion, compassion, especially for the nervous system.
Yeah, that one's been a harder part, not only of my journey, but I've noticed with a lot of people. Like, if we weren't raised with compassion, then learning it is something, first off, that we have to learn, and then second, we get safe with. So it's a multifold process. And no one is ever broken. If anything, it's just that we're doing the best that we can with what we had. One of my many lives was doing cars and car repair. And I think about it like, you know, we all are given these Lamborghinis, and a lot of us are trying to do the absolute bare minimum, giving it like Shell 1030 oil and 87 gasoline. And then we're wondering why we're not getting like 0 to 200 performance, or the things just crashed, when we're not acknowledging like what an amazing piece of equipment we have. And B, we're not treating it like, I mean, you would not treat a Lamborghini the same way as a Honda Civic. Like, if you did, the thing wouldn't actually run. And that's actually a lot of times what we end up doing with our bodies. Not that Honda Civics aren't awesome. I personally love Hondas. They run forever. But just like for the sake of the example, they're completely different care. And a lot of times people are like, oh yeah, you know, my body's just this old beat up Pinto. And they're running a Lamborghini into the ground.
I feel that too. Like I honestly, it's so multifaceted, right? Like, I remember when I was 18 years old, I was like, yeah, I'm an 80-year-old trapped in an 18-year-old's body. Like, I felt like shit when I was 18. Like, I felt so weak. I was underweight. I had like IBS. I had severe acid reflux. I was on medication for like that, and all these things, you know. And I was like, I guess this is just the cards I got dealt, you know. And then I realized, like, well, what are you putting into your body? You know, like, what are you eating? What are you drinking? How are you moving? How are you caring for your body? How are you speaking to yourself? Like, it was just such a full journey. And so I'm glad you brought that up too. It's very, very true. And it's a full package, you know. That's why people are always saying mind, body, spirit, you know, mind, body, spirit. because it's true.
Yeah, exactly. You can't just focus on the one and expect the other ones to be working fine. Like it's not going to happen at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like years ago, I got diagnosed with early onset Parkinson's, and I started like working on my physical self, and I've been working on my mental self because just I had really bad um, mental health to begin with, and I hadn't worked on both of them together. Like I had worked on my body for the Parkinson's part, and I had worked on my brain for the trauma part. I had not worked on my brain for the nervous system to try to work with my body to heal it part, which I mean, like I'm pretty asymptomatic now for someone that's got early onset Parkinson's. Like I should be,
Yeah.
that was almost 12 years ago. I should be a lot worse. And a large part of it was working with the mind body spirit connection. I'd also been working in Western medicine. So I kind of shut down everything, partly just to be able to deal with working in medicine. Cause otherwise, like there's
Yeah.
dead people everywhere. And as it is, I'm one of those people that'll be like, oh, sorry. And everyone looks at me weird. I'm like, shit, that person wasn't alive, were they? So I was trying especially hard not to do that at work, so they didn't think I was nuts. And I just kept shutting down more and more of myself. So I was disconnected from my mind, I was disconnected from my body, and I had purposely disconnected from my spirit. And what do you know? Everything was falling apart. My body was falling apart. The reason they actually diagnosed me was I'd start walking and then I would just collapse because my legs would freeze up and I couldn't take another step. And then they would just like lock and I would fall. And that was
Oh.
happening for a while. So I'm 25 and I'm losing my ability to walk already. I was like, well, this isn't good. Then they put me on medication, which made my liver tank like really quickly. So I had no choice at that point but to figure out a different way. And
Mm-hmm.
that's actually what started me getting into crystal healing right off the bat too, because I used to think
Mm.
that was bullshit. But I was an ultrasound tech, and I had found out that the reason you see the image back is actually the physioelectric properties of the ultrasound, which is full of little quartz crystals, rose quartz, smoky quartz, and clear,
Oh.
bounces off and it disrupts something. So you actually see the disruption of physioelectric properties. So like the
Mm.
crystals actually, like you can't have an ultrasound machine without those quartz crystals because it runs off of
Wow.
that property. And I was
I had
like,
no idea.
I wonder if it would do it for other things. And so I got palm stones, fairly big ones of all of those. And I got like the strongest vibrator I could find. The lady at the store was like, oh, honey, you're going to put yourself through a wall with this one. I was like, it's for a different part of me. And I let her know what was going on. She's like, oh, actually, this one isn't as strong, but it has more oscillations, which is what I wanted because that's what happens with the ultrasound probes. And within about 6 months
Oh,
of just doing that and having to get off medication, I was able to start walking again. So I
wow.
was like, damn, yeah, like those physioelectric properties, they do some
So
shit.
wait a second. What were you doing with the vibrator?
I would take, because my hips were locking up. So I'd take these, they were bigger than palm stones. They were like this. And I would put it on my hip and then I would put the big vibrator on top of it. And I would hold it
Oh,
there for at first 30 seconds because my hips were so locked. I was in like a stupid amount of pain. Like it was
okay.
bad. And then I got up to 2 minutes with each stone. I would do the rose quartz, the smoky quartz, and the clear one because I wasn't sure which one had the most efficacy. So I just did them all at
Right.
first. Um, and I would just hold it on there like for a while. I would move it around in different spots depending on my tension, but because that's actually all the ultrasound probe does is it just really quickly oscillates the crystals. So I got the vibrator to like kind of mimic the oscillation.
Hmm. Wow,
And
that is so, so fascinating.
yeah, it worked. Like my
Wow.
partner at the time was like, you crazy. I'm like, whatever, dude. I can't. And we're on the second floor. I'm like, I can't walk. So
Yeah.
I need to figure
Yeah.
something out. And it did actually really work.
Wow.
And
That's amazing.
I still can walk fine.
Very good. I'm very
Yeah.
happy to hear that. That's awesome. Yeah. Wow. It's so incredible. Like, honestly, like life can just be mind-blowingly like magical and incredible if you let it be, if you're willing to look for, that magic in those magical moments.
Yeah.
That just makes me like reflect a little bit, like about what's available to us. And
Right.
yes, there's always going to be the negative, and
Yeah.
we can look at it and we can reflect on it, but there's always going to be like the magic that's not necessarily like the magic doesn't necessarily have to be the feeling of like positive.
Mm-hmm.
It can be like the magic can just be like awe inspiring,
Yeah.
or, you know, just like I love curiosity. Like I love
Yes,
that
me too.
the frequency of curiosity. I think it's such a
Mm-hmm.
creative frequency. But when you
Mm-hmm.
think about creativity, you don't think about like rah, 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 you know, or
Yeah.
curiosity. You don't think about rah, rah, rah. You just think like it's just like sort of like sparkly, magical, you know,
Yeah.
sort of,
It's like more gentle.
yeah, vibration. So
Yeah.
really not thinking
Yeah,
that
I love it too.
you have to be some hyper positive, you know, jumping off the walls person in order to manifest. I
Yeah.
think we need that reminder all the time. So
And even with feelings, like I've had to try to adopt a new way of thinking about feelings so I don't think about them as like bad or good, because that was
yeah.
not only negatively affecting my mental health, but honestly, like I was not so great at processing things because like most other people, you know, we're trained to avoid the bad, air quotes. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought about it more and I was like, you know, are my bad feelings actually bad? Like for a long time, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
feel sadness because I was so shut down. I didn't let myself feel lost. I didn't let myself feel that that pain. And now when I do feel sad about something, like you know, the family member death we had this week, it's like, you know what? My heart is on and it's working. That's taken a shit ton of therapy, and I'm proud of me for that.
Yeah, yeah.
Sadness also means that I got to love something that much, and I'm really grateful about that. And there's other
Mm-hmm.
things. So I've had to, for me, redefine also what I consider like bad, so that because that's still for me a self rejection. If
Mm-hmm.
parts of me are bad when they're not, they're just inherently parts of me. Like my anger, like I'm a redheaded Cuban and a Leo. I got a fucking temper on
Ooh.
me. If you cross me, like
Ooh.
I'm really, really, really chill. But if you cross me, like you will wish you died as a child. I've got to temper. And everyone said that was such a bad thing for a long time, but it's usually in a protective instance, actually.
Yeah.
And the few times that my temper's gone off, it's been usually around kids that I was being very protective of. And the adults thought that I shouldn't have made a scene, but the kids later on were like, thank you. It's nice to know that like I'm safe. And I don't give a shit if the adults are upset I made a scene. I care that a small child feels safe in this world.
Yeah.
So I don't see my anger as something negative either. So for me, a large part of not only manifesting, but just growing as a person has been, I guess, de-villainizing some of my emotions.
Yeah.
That sounds weird, but
No, it
you
doesn't.
know,
I've gone down this path recently too. I read this book.
yeah.
I'm still not quite finished. It's called Existential Kink. I mention it all the
Oh,
time actually.
I love that book. Yeah, it's good.
It's so good. It took self-acceptance to like a whole next level for me where I was like, "Oh, I get to find pleasure in like the darkness inside of me," or like, and I don't even like calling it darkness or like shadow. I
Right.
don't even love that framing, but like
Mhm.
the perceived, you know, bad, the perceived, it's like, well, how am I actually like getting off on this? How am I actually like how am I benefiting from this perceived negative part of me? Like another
Right.
term for it is secondary gain, right? But like
Mm-hmm.
I really like that because it was like, ooh, kinky, like taboo, fun. Let's
Right.
like just flip this whole script. And I've never seen anyone talk about it the way that the author does there. Not
Yeah.
remembering the author's name right now, but I want to come back one more second to
Oh, of
child,
course.
like the child and the inner child and stuff. Because when I first like, I don't think a lot of people when they hear about inner child, they're like, yeah, does everything really have to go back to childhood? Like, can't we just get on with it, get over with, you know? Like, and what
Yeah.
is this woo woo inner child business? Like, what is it
Leave the
even?
past in the past.
Yeah. So what do you have to say about that? And also, how can people start interacting with their inner child if that's something that they're ready to, you know, if they're at the level you know, preparedness to go there?
Yeah, for sure. Um, as far as like the inner child sort of thing, I get it too, because I even when I'm working with like clients or doing classes, I'm like, y'all might get sick of hearing the words inner child by the end of this, but it's the big boss of everything. There's no way to get around it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the I guess stigma, I guess if you will, like getting around that for me with the inner child work, because I resisted it so badly, like with traditional therapy for a long time. And my therapists were like, yeah, but you had a particularly spicy childhood. Like we need to go into it. You need to do inner child healing. And I was like, no, I don't. That's some cheesy crap. Um, I don't. And they're like, okay, fine. So before I started doing the healing, I started doing the reconnection. And that was things that I liked doing when I was a kid. But my family was very much like, if it doesn't serve some sort of a purpose, just don't, you're wasting your time. So a lot of
Right.
times I didn't do silly things like playing or like, going out and getting dirty in the mud or coloring or things like that. And so that was one of the first things that I started doing was coloring books, because I would have fun with them, but my family was like, I'd be done, I'd think it'd be all pretty, and they're like, you didn't even draw that, like. And
Oh.
so
Oh.
I know. So I still actually I have one from like a Lisa Frank one, and I did this cute little unicorn. It's all pretty, and it's up on my fridge.
Aw.
So one of the quickest ways that you can start working with your inner child is doing the things that you wish you could have had as a kid. Like, I
Mhm.
really wish I could have gotten some credit just for, well, like most kids do. I mean, it might be dumb, but it's pretty to you, and you'd like for somebody to show it off for you. So I also have pictures on my fridge of like my friends as kids have made me too,
That's
because
so
I think it's
sweet.
important. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
but that was one of the first things that you can do is look back, and we all know what we didn't get as kids. Like, we know it
Mhm. Mhm.
uncomfortably well. And so we can start giving ourselves that as adults. And one of those things too that was big for me was congratulations, because I was like, gifted kid, so every excellence was expected, and anything less was like just subpar.
Me too.
Yeah, and I
My
never did anything excellent. Excellent was just run of the mill, and I was like, fuck.
right.
So
Yeah.
I
My
celebrate the hell out of everything. I'm like, damn girl, that was
yeah.
awesome. You're smart. You're brilliant. You're capable.
I
Like,
know.
holy shit, you're awesome.
I
And
just like verbally praise myself out loud all the time now. It's exact same. Like I was gifted as a child. My dad he was joking. I have a good relationship with my dad, but he would go, I'd bring home like a 95. He'd go, where's the other 5%? Ha ha ha. Like he would joke about it, but still it was like, the
yeah,
situation. So now I walk around and I'm like, you know what, mommy, you're doing a really good job. You got so much done today. You did
you
all the things you wanted to do. And I'm like talking out loud to myself as I go through the house, doing
yes.
the things.
It's important though. And
Yeah.
honestly, the second part of that was something that I didn't realize was like so important, not just for manifesting, but like adulting in general, which is self-parenting.
Yeah.
Um, and I didn't know that self-parenting, I mean, I heard it kind of tossed out there, but I didn't realize how much inner child care and self-parenting, they're not even intertwined. They're the same fucking thing. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
how you take
It
care
is.
of your inner child is how you self-parent yourself, like, period. And then I
Yeah.
realized, like, oh damn, like I might be worse at parenting than my caregivers. I don't like this. And so I started going about it
Right.
also from more of a parenting perspective. And I looked at my friends that are excellent parents, and I mimicked a lot of what they were doing with myself,
Mhm.
which felt silly at first, but also that was something I needed to get used to as well, because I wasn't even allowed to feel silly as a kid. So my
Mm.
body needed to get used to
Yeah.
that one.
You had to like be on hyper vigilant under control. Eh?
Oh my God, I was such a little adult. I was,
Yeah,
when you
me
said
too.
like I felt like a little 80-year-old, I would joke all the time that I felt like a 90-year-old in a kid's body. And
Hmm.
everyone was always so proud, like, oh, you're such a little adult. You're so mature. And I was like, I'm so dead inside. That's all it is. I'm just dead inside.
Oh man, yeah, honestly, like I feel like we could just talk forever about this stuff. With the inner child, like that is your subconscious programming. Like
Yeah.
that is running the show. So if you don't want to call it your inner child, you can just think about it as like your subconscious programming, because it's the first 7 years of life, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the programming, period.
Yeah. And your
Um,
nervous system is the first three, actually,
oh God.
which is a little, yeah, your love map is the first seven, but your nervous system's actually the first three. So
That puts so much pressure on parents, but
yeah, I know. And that's the three like most frustrating years too, generally until you hit the teen years.
so hard. You know what? I
Yeah.
actually just recently heard like reparenting the inner teenager, and I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, this
Yeah.
is something that I haven't considered yet. And then I thought to myself, she comes out all the time. I think she's somebody I need to start having conversations with, because I had like pretty much zero parenting as a teenager. Like I moved out at 17, and my mom was just like completely incapacitated for several years before I moved out. So, and my dad wasn't living with us. So I was like a free bird as a teenager. So
yeah, you're self-parenting then.
I was, and I don't think that a teenager should be self-parenting. So that's something that I'm going to be exploring personally, coming down the line. But this conversation has been so incredible. I knew it would be. Maybe we'll have to do a part 2 sometime down the line. But one question that I ask everybody before we wrap up is, what are you currently manifesting?
I'm actually working on, I'm relaunching my Simply Soulpreneur, which is, it's a business course, but it's a lot of focus more on like trauma and the personal development, and not so much as in just the education and the like, semantics sort of thing, although that is on the back end. So the next, that starts on the 24th of this month. So I'm manifesting about a dozen people that are going to be great for this. This one's going to be a very, very high touch experience. So I don't think I'll have the spoons to do more than a dozen right now.
Right.
But I'm really excited for the next round. It's neurodivergent specific. And because I've also noticed that people with trauma, even if you're not biologically neurospicy, then you end up CPTSD and PTSD, as well as getting hit fairly frequently, can also mimic the ADHD symptoms, the symptoms of ADHD. There we go. That's what I was trying to say.
Right.
So there's a lot of like hacks and stuff in there for that as well. So I'm looking for the 12 like exact right people that like, yes, they want to improve their business and maybe they're in a pivot, but really they're just like at the point where they're tired of just doing affirmations and pushing through and faking imposter syndrome, and really want to like have a brand that monetizes based off of like the comfortable ass human being that they actually are.
Yeah, coming back to authenticity, integrity.
Yeah.
And my 2 words for 2022 are integrity and sustainability. So
I love that. Yeah, sustainability is a big one for me. I've been revamping a lot this year because I did so much one-on-one work and it just wasn't sustainable. I couldn't do it, especially since I do very, very deep, like, traumatic work and nervous system work. When you're doing that with like 6-7 people a week individually, it can get very hard. Whereas like if you're working with a group, kind of walking them through it, it's for me less emotional spoons. So right now I'm working on manifesting that, although for the entire year, we have some other projects that we've got going that I'm not going to say all of yet, but that I've been wanting to do like for years now. And I'm finally at the place where they're actually starting to take form and actually starting to shape up. And I'm like, almost can't believe that it's actually finally happening.
Oh, that's so exciting. Yeah, you have so much to offer.
Summer.
I can tell that you have so much to offer, and I'm excited to see how our relationship develops as well, because there's just so many things that we have that like link up. And I'm so attracted to the work that you do. So I'm excited to see where that goes, and just let everybody know where we can find you right now online.
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook, Summer Aguila, or my handle is Your Mom Called Me Poppy. Or on Instagram, summer.aguila. My website is simplyspiritsupport.com. But usually I'm on Facebook. I have a free group in there that has like a ton of free education. That's Simply Spirit Support. Like the first unit in there is the physics of manifesting. So you can learn how manifesting actually works. Totally free, because I think it's messed up. People should charge for it. And then I also in the units have like stuff for mental health, nervous system, all those sort of things. So you can actually get going and make the change that you need, even if you're not financially able to right now.
Okay, so we'll put all that in the show notes. We'll put all the links there. And thank you again so much for this.
Thank you for having me. I
really loved it. Yeah. Okay. Everybody, thanks for listening, and I hope you're enjoying your day.